Live from the Pines, your favorite East Texas sports podcast, coming at you live. Tonight we welcome Lovejoy High School defensive coordinator David Branscom. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for
Was
having
that
me.
perfect?
That's perfect. You can't
Ah.
do it any better than that.
Coach David, it's the off season of football. It's the time for you to go to the drawing board, see what spots you got to fill, what guys coming up next, what we're going to do different this year at Lovejoy. But Coach David, before we get started, where did it all start for Coach David at?
I think it was about seventh grade when I decided I wanted to be a coach. Obviously, having great coaches was the reason. Seeing guys in a leadership role outside the framework of my family that really I knew at that early age. One of them being Daryl Daly, whose son is the quarterback for Army right now, who's wrecking shop. And then
He's
kind
a
of
warrior.
he is a warrior. There ain't no doubt. I remember he brought him to coaching school when he was a freshman in high school. It's like there's no way this kid is a freshman. He's a
That
stud.
kid's
He
he's
got
a
all of it
warrior.
from his mama too. Is the thing. So Abernathy, Texas. I went to. I bounced around a couple places in college and ended up at Mary Hardin Baylor, which really looking at it from the outside, didn't have much interest in it at the time. Small, used to be a girls' school. They were just starting football, and it was a need that I had at transferring from another school, and played there. Was the first GA in UMHB history, which I didn't know exactly what that meant, but and then got on full time there in 2004, which was 7 years after starting a program. The first year we went to the national championship and stayed there and learned a tremendous amount from some really good coaches. Left there in 15, kind of knew starting a family and wanting to elevate myself, and fortunate to recruit the San Antonio area for 15 years or so. And a guy by the name of Jeff Fleener, who's at Forney now, got a head coaching job there, and we were able to connect and went on as the DC. And 2 years after that, became the head coach, and then left there to go to Allen when Chad Morris got the job as the defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, and then had a small stint at Grapevine, America, great place, and then now at Lovejoy. And so really for a guy in coaching, as long as I have to have as many gray hairs, I really haven't been that many places, especially in high school, but definitely the early years and I'm sure you're familiar a little bit with UMHB football, just being in sports, but
Always winning. They're always playing for a national championship. It feels like
we are a proud program based on the tradition and what's been built, and it was built by we had the same head coach from 98 to 2022, which probably has the best winning percentage of any college coach in Texas, as far as football is concerned, and that correlated to some real growth. I'm not saying I'm a good football coach by any stretch of the means, but I definitely got to see what that looked like, and what that example to strive to and what to demand in the things you ask of your kids to be successful, because that's a fine line. You can we were talking about it before we got on the air of how difficult it can be. I mean, the penthouse is not it's pretty and all, but it's not far from the outhouse. This game will embarrass you. And that's the thing you're trying to do the most, is put your kids in a position to be successful. So,
well, as for you, as far as having the chance to coach at the college level, as you start as a GA, then getting to move into a recruitment role, and then getting to go and fill the need as a defensive coordinator. How much do you think you learned and gained, from getting to start on the collegiate level, then move your way to the high school level?
I think I learned what it takes to build a culture to be successful. Because that's the thing, is like each year is different, each team is different, the needs are different, the personalities are different, but nothing's changed in 30 years of coaching as far as what it takes to be successful. And so much about that is not the Jimmies and Joes, even though we all know how effective, some great players can be on a football team. But, if you can control the result to the point that ball's kicked off, or even while that ball's, in play, you can give your kids the best chance to be successful. And so that's kind of those early years of college. Now the difficulty in coaching high school, I had no idea. I recruited the same area, recruited kids from the school that I went to work at. So I recruited some really good football players. Brandeis had been a good football program for the San Antonio area prior to that. So, and then I realized very quickly time, not just the ability of the kids, but time, because the mental fortitude of a kid these days with what they have access to, and you look at the maturity and how many kids are leaving, high school and starting at a high level, SEC level, the percentage of youth and that push, that maturity level is increased. Now, how much they can handle, I think, is different. And I think a lot of that came down to the amount of time that you can hammer kids in college. But it set that great foundation. I had to understand the parameters of high school and a bell schedule and, the things that I wasn't, or kids missing spring practice to go to orchestra. That I never had to deal with that or that balance, multi-sport athletes. And so there was a lot of learning when I got to high school in that regard. But I think the foundation for winning was set in college, specifically, the one college I was at.
Coach Branscom, like you said, having the chance to do all those things and learn the difference between the college and high school level, do you think, as far as where you're at now at Lovejoy, you don't think the game has changed in any format as far as the defensive side of the ball, where kids are playing nowadays? I'm sure when you first started, you had defensive tackles running a 5 flat, and that was common. Now you have a defensive end lining up running a 4-4, or a guy playing on the inside of the defensive line running in, the high 4s, mid 4s.
Yeah. Well, and I think, controlling that's so hard to control. And obviously, how you find ways to be effective surrounded by playing people that have, great players or a couple great players. I think the scheme itself throughout the years has changed. The game has changed in that regard. I heard some coaches coming to visit offensively, and they were talking to our O-line coach who does a great job. And I played against some of these guys that I'm coaching with now as a head coach at Brandeis when they were at Westlake. And just what you're talking about earlier, as far as the tells, the things, the cheats that you, by watching film, can have an idea of the plays that are coming. They did such a tremendous job of keeping everything so even keel that it's so hard to kind of, they're not going to beat you by formationing you to death. They're going to put their athletes in the right spots. But it's not going to be something that you can really kind of get an idea before that ball snapped. And those things were the things that, as the game grew, attacking space. I came from an old school mindset, and I loved the physicality that it grew, like especially what we played against offensively. But, we learned early on, like throwing the ball 3 times a game in this game in college. You're not going to recruit a great quarterback. So that I think all in all, as that game's evolved, it's kind of changed our scope. But the question was asked to our O-line coach was like, why is those O-linemen hands not on the ground? Well, because of how much they're asked to do athletically in the screen game and those things, depending on what you're running offensively. But, for them to be effective, that hand's not on the ground. And that's the opinion of a good coach, that's running that program. But so much of the versatility of it has changed, and how you look at how to utilize and Aranda, which I had a man crush on Aranda for a long time. He always talks about changing the math defensively, like who's dictating terms. You've got a side of the ball that knows where they're going with the play they're running. Everything you do is reactive. Now, you may have a scheme in that has structure, but how that fits up, they have to react to that. So putting them in the best pieces to be successful, that game has evolved so much in the learning process. high school, college, all the same.
Not taking anything away from offensive coaches, but from the outside looking in, I really believe that coaching the defensive side of the ball is 10 times harder than coaching the offensive side of the ball for the reason you just said. When I call play on the offense, these kids know which way they're going. When I'm calling a defense, you can obviously look at a certain formation of the offense set up and everything and know, okay, it's a 50% chance this ball is going this way. It's a 50% chance he's getting the ball or they're throwing the ball. But on the defensive side of the ball, you as a coach, you're playing a guessing game. You have an idea of,
Right.
basically what you're wanting to happen out of the play. But there's a 9 out of 10 chance that that's not going to happen. If you get to the college level now, you look at guys like Steve Sarkisian, for instance, the way he runs his offense, it's a chance he might throw the ball or he might run the ball with the RPO game and how much it's involved in college football. I'm sure you're seeing that at the high school level now.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing with the RPOs. I mean, I think that in itself has changed the game. I mean, I think one of the best defensive minds that I ever got to spend some time with in college was Gary Patterson. And I mean, tremendous. And some of our structure starts kind of from that base. It's changed throughout the years. And, a lot of people look at those concepts as prehistoric. And the reality of it is if it's got good run support and it's physical and it puts your kids in a position to be successful, it's good, but what that's evolved to from the RPO world, especially, you almost at times can't be right. And so I think you're spot on with the guessing game. It can feel like that some. You don't want your kids to feel like that, though. If you're going to try to control the result, you're going to try to steal as much tendencies. I never used to look at much tendencies or try to steal signals or, you get out there in high school and, you better try to do everything you can. I mean, when you screw up bands play, you don't, offensively, you don't get to punt the ball. And I'm not saying that just to say it. I mean, I work with some great coaches offensively. They go attack it. But I will say when I first started coaching in high school at our little defensive parties, my wife would put up signs like "We don't punt" is the, that's the theme of our little party because it is hard. You're right.
Yeah, it's tremendously hard. And like you said, team, you didn't just give up a crazy amount of points, like as DC. We're not going to say that, but the teams that did succeed against you offensively, they had some high-powered offenses. But you as a coach, you had some shutouts. You had some games where, you didn't have to worry about anything. But as far as your game plan inside the game, when you're playing, athletes that are talented, like the Quentin Gibsons, for instance, guys like that are just Corey and Moores and stuff. How do you plan your game around that? Because I know some coaches will sit out there and say, well, I'm not going to plan my game around this one kid. But sometimes you have to because the kid's just that athletic.
Yeah, I think you got to be real careful. I mean, the direction you take throughout the week, you definitely see how well that plan was put together or not when your kids try to go execute it. And the easy thing is to blame kids when it's not executed correctly. I don't think you build the culture that I talked about earlier by not letting those kids know that you're just as much a responsibility to this as they are on the field. And when things don't go right, processing that result, looking at your own fault in that decision or how it was coached, right, and how it matched up. So when you're trying to negate the best player on the field, I think a lot of times guys look to situations right outside the framework of their base that can be done. It's real hard to do that play in and play out and know that you can be effective as far as defending 11. But I definitely think there's times for it. Sometimes some of the guys we played in the district that we're in right now, I mean, I don't think those guys could be tackled in a phone booth. I really don't. And I think playing them just proved that, so learning to stay positive, learning to, change things if they need to. I'm not one to run the same thing. I always make the comment, like, I'd love to be at a place where we have the guys athletically that we want at every position and get really good at one thing. Unfortunately, just what I said earlier with the game changing, right? How you attack space, formations, the RPOs. I think you've got to be able to change that math and what that quarterback sees to effectively, even bluffs. I mean, we just did a long Zoom or Google Meet. We've got some coaches kind of a 4-2-5 family that get together every Wednesday. And we just got done with looks, bluffs, camos. And it's all just what is the quarterback seeing pre-snap to change the math, because we feel like we've got to do anything we can to gain that advantage. But very hard to, you can double team a guy from time to time. You can do some things, but hardest is a quarterback that can't be stopped. That's what makes it. The addition of that number running the football, or the ability to run the football, really puts a lot of stress on defenses.
Well, as far as Lovejoy right now, where are y'all at in y'all's off-season program? Where are y'all, where do you think y'all are at right now as far as, are y'all still hammering the weight room? Are we getting ready to transition into football? What are we doing?
Well, the good thing for us is we have a leader in our head coach that knows how to do it. As a head coach, he's played in 9 and won 7. So he knows exactly what he wants. He has a structure for each phase. He communicates to our kids constantly about what we're trying to gain from this phase. We kind of started out in the month of January in a strength, size, and flexibility phase, also with a drive phase, gaining speed phase. And now we're more of a changing the functional strength, still heavy in the weight room. And now we're kind of focused on change of direction. That'll kind of, and that's all while our quarterback school's going on. That surrounds that. And so
as far as the quarterback school, can you speak a little bit on that?
I'll just say this. I don't think anybody in the United States does it better at the high school level than Coach Dodge, as far as the preparation, as far as
I think Riley will argue that.
Well, he had to learn it. He had to learn it from somebody. And I definitely think that there's a lot of similarities, and Riley does a tremendous job. I mean, those guys, they had what an incredible year, and with a really loaded team coming back too, which is crazy. But one of my best friends is the former DC, now head coach at Westlake, and Tony Salazar. And so I used to ask him, because as a head coach, I wanted to learn when you're an opponent of somebody, not district, but we played twice in the quarterfinals in 18 and 19. So getting too much information was kind of, in coaching, that's kind of hard to do.
Yeah.
Because I'm hearing, like, from the day they got back after they got beat, which was normally late in the year, a ball was in the air. And that's while they're growing and lifting, and you're just like, man. And so a lot of it, they
didn't take like a week off, or no.
I mean, and I think for a lot of it, when you watch it being coached, I mean, it's Coach Dodge's love of coaching and coaching that position that you see in the passion of it. But within the framework of what's allowed by the UIL, that ball can only be touched during the athletic period right now. And so while the majority of us are lifting, right, they are getting skills and fundamentals of quarterback throwing and mechanics done during that, and then making up their lift outside that framework. But he's going to take the time to make sure that that's the most important thing. I think most of what you would say Coach Dodge's classroom is actually being out there, interacting in that growth, which I think is great. It's so easy to lose a kid when you put him in a chair for, too long a period of time. Not to say it's not effective and there's not value in it, but I've just been so impressed with watching Coach Dodge. And I've only been here, the 21st of February was a year for me to kind of see bits and pieces, and then kind of see it unfold from the part that I missed, coming in February last year. There's just a major emphasis to their growth, because they're such an instrumental piece, and not just the growth of one, but throughout the program. high school level. And I think that's another thing Coach Dodge does an incredible job is in the growth of a program from the junior high level up. It's just been a tremendous blessing to have an opportunity to kind of witness that and learn from that.
As far as you say the middle school up, what are some of the things that y'all are doing as coaches to interact with the youth and also the middle school kids?
Well, it's funny because so he retired in 21, and we played each other in 18 and 19. And then I left in 21 to go to Allen. And so when he got back into it this past season, he was out for 2 years. He went to a district meeting, and he was floored by the fact that both 7th and 8th grade play on the same night. And only for the simple reason of the amount of attention to coaching with those coaches, because if they're playing the same night, those coaches are split. So how many coaches are on that sideline coaching in an effort to help these kids be successful, but also to teach them those things necessary when they get in those situations at that age that they're going to have to learn through those teachable moments, those things. And so in San Antonio at that time, we played both, 7th and 8th the same night. I don't know if it was different in Austin. I know for him, just from a program standpoint, that was a huge problem. So he found ways to get our coaches on a game day, especially in front of those kids, 8th grade and 7th grade, home and away. And he just wanted to guarantee that you were going to have more coaching. That's not the same, obviously, as the time spent when they're, practicing. But those coaches are all devoted to that grade at that time because they're split, and you get those coaches. But he saw a need there and put pieces in place, meaning we weren't working if they were playing, right, to make sure we were there to not only grow relationships with them, but to help them, coaching on the sideline. And so I think that makes a tremendous impact in just the investment, of your future, because when you're trying to, keep your job and win on Friday nights, it's real easy to overlook the growth of a program when you feel like it's so paramount that what you do on Friday night matters the most.
So you as a defensive coach and defensive mind, what are some of the things you look for into building your starting 11 out there, as far as your linemen to your linebackers to your secondary positions? What do you look at in the kid? Is it size? Is it speed? What do you like to do?
Well, for a long time, I like to do what I knew how to do best. And I realized when I went to high school, I used to talk about, I spoke at some clinics after my first season on defense because so many coaches told me the best thing to do was to run what they'd done for a couple years and kind of blend yours into it. But when you've got an ego and you think you know best and you're going to do what you know best, you're going to bring your 20 different defenses into one game. And if it doesn't fit the kid, it none of that matters. Like, it's not about you. And that's the hardest part for all of us. It's about putting kids in a position to be successful. And so we spent that season in a 4-2-5, and I used to, like, my presentation speaking was like the year of pain. And it was pain for me in the growth of, this doesn't fit our kids. What is it that's going to help us be successful in that? And you get different kids, and maybe you get a scheme that you want. But so for me, size, I mean, you got to work with what you have. That's the hardest thing about, high school compared to college. You can't go recruit them. So obviously the ability to run, those are all things I think about that question you asked. And I think about, the intangibles, the things I'm looking for in guys to build that culture more than how fast they run, how high they jump, right? Can you be physical, right? Can you be passionate? Right? Can you be relentless, which is my favorite word because of my favorite definition, showing or promising no abatement of severity, strength, or pace, a heat-seeking missile, somebody that'll run through a wall, and can you care about others? And so those things are the things, especially like now in off season that a lot of these kids get into the day to day and they have a hard time processing, like what you do right now matters. right? I'm evaluating every little ounce of it, how you just got in that line, where you got in that line. What kind of competitor are you? Because obviously we're all competitive, but there's a difference in the level when you're fighting for inches. And so finding those, war daddies, and those war daddies may be undersized, but that's probably the greatest thing from college to high school that I learned, because the maturation aspect in college compared to, you may see a kid for the first time in high school, and 9 months later, he may look totally different, not just what he looks like, but how he moves. And so that it is the most beautiful thing, especially when they move into a much better athlete than what you projected initially, because they're obviously we like where we're at. We want to keep our job. So you're looking for those guys that can be effective. And the hard part in that is the ones that at that time don't kind of meet that criteria. And just to see guys buy in and grow, and then their bodies, with no help to you in the sense of what they're going to grow to. Not that you can't help build mass and strength and size and speed, but that growth is so special. So I think obviously what you run schematically is based on what you have, but you're looking for guys that can run, that have a tremendous competitive spirit, and that are mentally tough and can be trusted, to do the things you're asking them to do, because that's hard. It's hard for guys to focus through that point, and put themselves in a position to step across the line and make mistakes 100 miles an hour. That's
great. Well, everybody knows that the head coach at Lovejoy is Todd Dodge, and he has had the success he's had at many places. And, if you're from Lufkin, you obviously dislike the guy because he has ruined, him and his son have ruined a lot of football seasons for a lot of people, and many others on that team. It just wasn't Riley, and Riley played a big part. But as getting to learn from a guy like Coach Dodge, getting to work under him, how much has that impacted you as a coach? Tremendously in the sense of probably like the preconceived notions, just what you're saying, hitting it on the head. Like if you play them, you really don't like them too much. Yeah.
Really we're white.
Always disciplined.
Yeah.
They always have this white kid that nobody knows of that can run a 4.4, 4.3, and throw. He always had those hidden gems, and he always liked the long ball to be. That's one thing I always noticed about him. He loved to bomb you. And he would do it, and he would do it at any time of the game. It didn't matter where he was out on the field. If he had a weakness he liked, a one-on-one matchup, he was going at you. Yeah, no doubt. Well, and I think outside looking in, especially if you've been an opponent, your ego gets in play, and you look at kind of the ego and the success and the bravado, and what you find working with him is just somebody that, because when he comes back after retirement, you kind of say, well, what is it? I mean, what really is it? Are you truly passionate about this? I'm going to move my family, things like that. And obviously, I don't think I'm questioning a guy like that when he tells me he's ready to go. He tells me he's ready to go. That's fine. But you really see that, attention to detail. I think a great head coach, one of the biggest criteria is a great forecaster, somebody that can see it ahead of time, put the pieces in place. Reach out to the people necessary to have that avenue be an option for whatever the distraction is or the problem upcoming. But just how much he cares about the process, it has been something really awesome for me to see how down to earth he is, how much he cares about these kids, how much he knows who they are, and the little things like how he gets things done. In a manner that I wish I had probably more charismatic traits to do. Being a defensive guy, we have a tendency to, kind of push, and he does it in a manner that makes everybody feel a part. He wants it to be fun, and obviously the most fun is in the winning. Let's not kid ourselves in that regard, but it's been a tremendous opportunity that I feel blessed to be a part of, and hopefully if we can have better results than we had last year, I can keep that opportunity. So Well, the ultimate goal with him obviously is a state championship. I heard Riley say win district, play after Thanksgiving, and play for a state championship. Win a state championship, not play
Yep.
for it, win it.
Yep.
Those are three goals that stuck out to him. So I'm sure he got those from his dad.
Yep.
And like you said, all the things that he does outside of just the game, it makes a big difference in his success.
There's no doubt. And being at good places, he's no dummy. And now the funny part is what if you talk to the old guys as far as when he took that South Lake job, what that South Lake job was at the time, perception wise, to the outside, it wasn't a great job at that time. So you look at kind of the pedigree and what he's done. It's been pretty awesome to see. But there's been places he's built too. So it's finding the right place and then getting it the way he wants it, and he's done great doing that.
As far as, Lovejoy, I hear all these stories about coaches' work week and how crazy it can be. How much time are y'all putting in during the week as far as, in the football season, preparing for those game days?
The framework of what he structures for all of us as a staff, I think is, it's the old adage, it kind of takes what it takes. You'd mentioned earlier about your brother and or a coach, staying up all night. I've had those days. I've had those days even in later in my career, like this past season, where if you don't feel settled about something, especially with what you're trying to put out there, on a Tuesday or what you can convey to your kids. I think, outside the normal framework of what your hours are, that's the hardest part to put the stamp on, because I think based on the team that you're playing and that time, but obviously it's 7 days a week. Now it's not like it was in college. I mean, we were 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for hopefully five and a half months. And we had a lot of, middle of December seasons at Mary Hardin Baylor, and our head coach would give us a day off Sunday and we'd be on the road for 2 months. And so that framework from college to high school is not as much, but that, when people normally throw that at me, my wife kind of looks at them crazy, because I really don't spend any less time than I did in college in the preparation, because it's that hard. And the more you watch, the more you learn. And that time is hard to, it's hard to define that as the value in what you find when you're simply just watching film. We want to put a product on the result of what we're doing. And that time's hard. So I think, you're talking about our practices Tuesday, Wednesday, or 5:30 in the morning. And that takes a little getting used to.
Hold on. In the high school, I'm talking when you were at the college level.
At Lovejoy. He started that. He started that, honestly. I don't know where he got it from, because I remember the first time I brought it up, it was 2015. They were playing Allen in the semifinals. They went on to lose to North Shore in overtime in Houston. That's why we kicked field goals to start every practice. 2 games he lost because 2 of the 9 he lost because of field goals. But our Monday after our practice Mondays in the afternoon, we have a quick turnaround, 5:30, and in the structure of what he's growing, we get things out of the way. Plus our appeal to multi-sport athletes as far as what their obligations are in the afternoon. When I was a head coach, I mean, we had middle of the school day athletic period that backed up to your lunch. So we were going to hit our kids in the morning. We were going to hit our kids at lunch. We were going to hit our kids after school. And, 3 or 4 months of that, especially a defensive guy that wants to grind and push, that can be hard. So the 5:30 sounds hard, but I think what it afforded them, after school, tutoring, things like that, not putting on pads again, that being fresh, getting out of the heat, I'm not going to say everybody was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed every morning, but once they got used to it, it was something very effective. The year I referred to earlier in 15, they just started it that season. And so Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning. Well, there's a storm coming through Waco where they were playing Allen. And Monday night, I'm on the phone with him, and they pushed the game to Thursday. And I'm like, how in the world are y'all going to practice at 5:30 in the morning Tuesday, 5:30 Wednesday?
And then go play a football
You're going to
game.
play a game on Thursday? No way, bro. Come on. And he's like, well, that's what he said. We'll see. And they did it. And I was on the sideline of that game. Coach Fleener, who was my boss at the time, had just left Allen to go to, take that head coaching job. He was with Kyler. He was 36-1. He's on one sideline. I'm on the other. And the Westlake Chaparrals were successful. So, you look at that process and you say, if the overall intent of what it's about is to give them some more freedom in that framework, because we battle multi-sport athletes, all the time in the sense of
that's something I wanted to talk to you about. Multi-sport athletes. But before we get there, I want to ask you something back to the 5:30 deal.
Okay.
How are we making sure kids have getting to practice at 5:30? Buses aren't running. How are we making sure kids are getting there? And I'm sure, like Coach Dodge, the kids believe, so they want to be there. Right. They believe in what he's saying. It's not like, man, this guy's crazy. I ain't going to that. Like, if Coach Dodge says we're going to be there at 5:30, we're going to be there at 5:30. Right. But how are we making sure kids get there and all those things?
Well, and I think that's the beauty of a place like Lovejoy in the sense of, and I'm not saying the ones where you got to go pick them up are any lesser than the ones that are able to show up. I think this is a community that those things that have been instilled in them that are important. Sure. Did we have a few kids late throughout the year? Absolutely. But not at other places that I'd been where we were practicing earlier in the morning, and the saddest part was it seemed like at other places I'd been, the ones that were most affected or the ones that hurt the practice the most were the most important pieces, were the ones that were frequently late or having to find or go pick up. I've been on both sides of it. And what they deal with in a day-to-day, I think you can have great structures and great programs and all, but I think a head coach has really got to take a look at, can this be done at that time frame? Can we be successful at that time frame with where I'm at, with the community I have and the kids that, I'm trying to get the most out of and build some success for them. So it works here. And I think at the places he's been, realistically, he'd only been at one other place when I think he started it. He may have done it before, but I'm pretty sure around 15 is when that kind of was something he kind of changed and modeled for. Because to be honest, I mean, there's no defensive guy that likes a Monday night practice with a quick turnaround because a lot of stuff offenses do. They're not having a draw card. I mean, we've got to make sure that, what we're doing schematically is drawn to whatever they're doing in an effort that, it's not going to look anything like it's going to look at practice compared to Friday night, but the closest we can get it to give our kids the best chance, to see it and to be able to react to it so they can go play and have fun on Friday is the biggest goal.
Well, the way, I've been sitting here thinking about 5:30 practice since you said it, because that's a lot, but it's preparing you for the next level. Because when you get to that college level, you're going to have a 5:30 practice. You're going to have to get out there before the heat's getting started. But it also gives the body time from, I get out of school, I got time to go to tutoring if I need to go to tutor. There's no excuses there. If I play baseball, I got time to go throw a bullpen. I got time for all those things, but it also gives me time for my body to recover, fully. Because you got to practice at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the evening. You got time to do a little homework, eat, and go to bed. Yeah, that's it. Now I have time to go home, stretch, do all the extra things, give my body time to recover. Go get extra treatment in the evenings. All those things we have time for. Now there's no excuses for those things.
There's no doubt. And the biggest thing, is what, we alluded to earlier is how do you get better at competing? How do you sharpen that sword, that process, that wiring? Well, you compete more. And at a lot of places, it's really hard in the fight for what that multi-sport, kid brings to it. I think there's, a lot of, I heard a guy the other day talking about, like, in their off season, they have incentive based scoring with incentives for kids. Like, they're in so many events throughout the spring, which is, just something 20 years ago we would have never even thought of. But the reality of it is there's such a single-minded focus, especially with so many outside sources of training and what they hear, that makes it really hard to combat that. And when you're at a place like Lovejoy, you're 5A Division II, you're sitting at 1,500 and something kids. You need all the kids you can to be successful. And so if we can truly not just talk about we're going to work with these other sports, we're going to do these things, but really show them a path that here is a structure where you can actually still continue to grow and develop this other sport you're passionate about, even during the football season, then that commitment is something that he is 100% committed to. Because we're going to go recruit our hallways, and we're going to recruit them the best we can with what we have. But at the size of the school, unlike at Westlake or Southlake, and I'm not saying all the kids at Westlake were guys they wanted to, we're going to go be one of the best 11 mentality. But when you got 70 seniors. But at a place like this, we better shake those bushes to find every kid we can on campus and what they're capable of, even if there's any, if they played any youth football and they're not playing, just in an effort to be successful, and each place is different too. So, but that's his model. And I think it's a great model. It's way better than mine, because I struggled with sharing, and not struggled in the sense, just without you got to have great relationships with each coach, and they got to want that for that kid. They got to want him to do that. And that's the hardest part, is taking yourself out of it, putting the kid first, and understand the value of what he brings to your athletic program, in that effort. And once you get that kind of mindset and that leadership, I think, we're nowhere where we need to be, but at least I feel confident that the structure's there, that you can have honest conversations with kids that want to do other things and say, here's a real avenue for you to go do that. Jalen Greathouse would not have played at Westlake without kind of that avenue. He was one of the top players in his age group in basketball. I'm staring at him at state 7-on-7 in like 2019, and he's an 8th grader out there. And, these guys had just won the 7-on-7 the year before, out there catching passes. And then I have to see him in the quarterfinals about 3 feet from the sideline from me, and he looks like a Greek god. There's no way he is a freshman, but I think about, there's not too much Coach Dodge won't do with an outside the box thought to grow and change, which is the hardest thing for us. We are very hard-headed, especially defensive guys, in what is the thing that we think is the right way to do it. And that problem right there can, if you don't grow and evolve, and I think he's done a great job of doing that, especially with multi-sport athletes, which, only benefits us at a place right now where we need to grow that education of how important they are for not just themselves and that competitive edge, working with other people, being a part of other teams, all that growth aspect when you go build those intangibles to go be successful in life as part of it, and if you can contribute to something and help your school, why not? Why not? So many feel like if I go do this for a little bit of time, it's going to take away from that time. And that I get that, I do. But the reality of it is if I'm going to sharpen my sword in so many other avenues in that same arena and grow in regard, I'm only going to get better.
Well, Coach Branscom, that was great. I look at a lot of programs like Salina, Gunner, you have all these kids that their main sport 9 times out of 10 is going to be baseball. But they somehow find a way to put these kids on a football field. And I'm not saying these kids aren't football players. You can go watch them in December. They're football players. But it always blew my mind how these kids want to play football, because you come from a small town, and that's anywhere. You have kids that are, 10, 11 years old, and their dad's like, he's a baseball player. Has he ever touched a football? Has he ever touched a football? No. And then you hear the stories of like these big recruiters going in to recruit these baseball players and other sports. Like, what other sports does he play? And it's a big thing. And like, it pays off. You look at, Gray House for instance, he played basketball.
Yeah.
You go to all these athletes and they played basketball. I think Nick Saban had like 6 kids play football receiver for him that could have played basketball for Alabama.
Yeah.
And I never understood why kids, don't give football a chance. I understand that, you can go a lot of places and it can, you can go to the wrong program and it can make you not want to play football. I've heard a lot of kids say that, the reason I didn't want to play football is because I had to run track and go straight to baseball, yada, yada, yada. But if you can implement a way to make it work where these kids play football, it benefits them, not, in the long run of recruitment wise and all those things. And, I know, where I'm at in Lufkin, a thing is we have so many kids that play, just one sport. And that's a thing that, a lot of, we're trying to change, for instance. And you have a lot of kids that want to play football. But how do I make this work with my baseball schedule? How do I make this work with my basketball schedule? All the other sports out there. How can I make this align to where I can play football and still strive to be successful in my secondary sport or my main sport? But like, I don't even like to say that. I think that if you're an athlete, if you're a football player and a basketball player, or you play baseball and football, you're just an athlete. You don't have a secondary sport because you never know. You can get on that kid. He just won a state championship this year. He plays basketball. He was committed to Wyoming. He's is it not Columbia? It's they're in the Houston area. His name's Grayson Rigdon.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
He had 58 points.
Yeah.
This past playoff game, basketball.
Mm-hmm.
I promise you, this kid ain't touched a basketball during football season.
Yeah, no doubt.
And he's still going to Arizona State to play running back, and he has a chance to be better than Scatterboo. Like if you watched him play in that state championship game, the kid can flat out go. But he's averaging 50-something points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists on the basketball court, and I'm sure he's going to play baseball this year.
Yeah.
Like, as a coach, how do you make this work out for him? Is it the kid that he wants to do this, or is it like a coach making it? Okay, that's another thing. During football season, how are you making sure your kids are getting, working their secondary sport if they need to be? Like, how does that work?
Well, I think both coaches have to want the same thing. And I don't mean are willing to work around the other schedule to accommodate, unlike it was, 20 years ago. I think that's a given. You've got to be more accommodating. You got to look at the individual and the need and the growth. But twofold, I mean, you have to set the premise that both coaches, I want you to play baseball, and our baseball coach wants you to play football. And it has to be genuine that coach has to see the value from the other side. After that, I think it comes down to then being accommodating. I used to I was blessed at one point as a head coach in San Antonio to have what was considered to be the best high school soccer player, male, in San Antonio. And I was like, that's great, I guess. I don't know what that means. Well, what it meant was on Wednesdays, and this guy kicked field goals, extra points, played tailback, played safety, punted, right? So he's the guy like breathing, like the clock's running down, like not kicking an extra point because he just scored the touchdown. But like period 12 on Wednesdays, if I wanted him to be playing football, he was going to leave 8 periods early to go to his club practice. And so, that as a college guy doesn't comprehend. You don't have those conflicts of interest the same. There's conflicts, but not the same as there is in high school. And so I think, the coaches have to have that mindset, and their intent's got to be in the right place. Plenty of people will say, yeah, we want you to do all this, but then their actions don't speak that. So that attitude reflects leadership, number one. And those coaches really have to see that value. And once they see that value and understand the day and age we're in, make those accommodations, right? If necessary, those accommodations might not be cut and dry for each person based on what the need is. Because it's about getting them off the bus and having them be a part of it and grow in another regard. And so, it really starts with the coaches and then us getting out of our own way, the way it used to be, and knowing that this is a different day and age, and you really have to appeal to that need. So, as far as what that other sport working outside that framework looks like, I don't know, because I'm trying to stop a first down. But I do know that time is allotted and afforded, and that communication of what they're doing and where they are, is both approved by both sides in the growth of that athlete, because they think it's important for him. And that's got to be a pure intent by those coaches.
Well, Coach Branscom, one last question before I let you go. As far as Lovejoy, what is the community base like, and how involved are they in the program, and how much of a difference does that make for the program as far as just not football, but athletics in general?
Well, I think, outside looking in, and I was at Allen for 2 years too, which if you're familiar with Lucas and Lovejoy, we're not talking about too far off. And so I think you get some preconceived notions, of what the clientele is. And so, coming into the 24 season, everybody told us we were going to be down. The year before they had four starting Division I receivers, on one field. And so, the Jimmies and Joes, so they say, it was going to be a down year. And so, this season has been by far one of the funnest I've had in 24 years. And normally coming into a program for the first year, a lot of times it's, let's get through this year because of the buy-in, because of you might have the things you've asked for because of the newness, being a new coach, but is actually in the hearts and minds of those kids. A lot of times change is hard. And so, I think that senior class, these 25 graduates, that played the 24 season are the greatest example of what Lovejoy is to me, because these dudes just went to work, and there was some dudes. Day-Day's at Texas, a receiver for us. He graduated early. RJ's played safety for us. But as far as the amount of top tier, Division I players in years past, from the outside, I understood why people said that, that we were down. But that goes back to what I talked about, the things necessary to be a great team, and that team chemistry. And these guys fought for each other. They were willing to be coached hard. They were willing to listen. They were willing to, put others first and care about others. And so that, to me, is the greatest example of what this community is in that sense, because I didn't feel the upper echelon animosity that I may have from an outside perspective perceived looking at it. I just saw some people that were bought in to being successful at not just football, but everything, and trying to help in every regard of what they could control. And that is the greatest example of the team that we were able to coach. And obviously we didn't win one, but I felt like we played way above our pay grade, and it wasn't because of great coaching. I'm not saying we didn't coach our butt off, but the credit goes to these kids, because they were the ones that bought into each other and fought for each other and scratched for each other to put out a product that they could be proud of and look back on it and say, we did something special. Right. And they'd went 4 rounds the year before, and so special is relative. But I think when you talk these exit interviews with these younger kids coming back, all of the talk is, how do you build that same chemistry that these guys showed in the growth of younger kids? And because we pulled on younger kids to play with. So, it just gave me a great feeling of what this community is, because I think, the greatest example of that is them.
One more last question. You touched on this kind of,
Okay.
as far as you coaching at the college level, now the high school level, getting to see the ins and outs, what it takes to get to the next level and all those things. What do you have to say to parents that have kids, if it's middle school or high school, about letting your kid be coached hard by, there's always coaches out there that really don't, they really don't care. They're just saying things to say things. They're hard, whatever. But to have guys like you and your staff at Lovejoy, new faces coming in and all those things, but guys that have been there, done it, know the game. What do you have to say to parents as far as like, my kid deserves to be here, my kid deserves to be there, and like you said, your senior class, putting guys first, being coachable and realizing that y'all are doing what's best for the team and their futures.
Yeah. Well, and I think, coming in, Coach Dodge would reiterate over and over and over, come in with a servant leader mentality that I'm a football player, put me where you need me, which we all know, like in the back of their mind, what they believe they are. And I think, feeding into that at times just amplifies that issue. And so, making sure, I think it comes down to intent. I mean, in the small time that you have, right, we'll take this last class, you have to show in whatever way you can that your intent's in the right place. Obviously, you have to critique the performance and not the performer. There's a lot of growth from where we were 20 years ago in the day-to-day age in which we deal with these kids. I mean, their why is different. The questions are different. They want to know, and Saban said it best, they want to know why we have to do it this way. They weren't 20 when I was playing, go run that way. I'm going,
Yeah.
I might still be running if somebody didn't blow this, So I think you got to show that you're in it for the right reasons, and that's about molding young people to be successful in life. And that's not by being a dictator or, attacking to a point where you get diminishing returns. I came from college to high school. I never dealt with anxiety. I never knew what that was. I was very inbred in what I experienced on a day-to-day basis, and to deal with kids with anxiety, those things, there's so much in the society that's changed, but we still want to play this game and we still want to be successful. So you have to make sure that they know you're in it for their best interest and not to be ran over. It still takes what it takes to be successful. And there's a push and a mindset, but how it's done, how you grow that relationship of trust, because that trust is not just between me to that player. That player's looking at me the same way. Can I trust him to put me first and put me in a position to be successful and care about my needs and care about the things that I don't even know they're experiencing at home and bringing it in on a daily basis. So I've come a long way in that regard. I worked at a place where it was 4th down and 1 every day for a long time. And there's nothing wrong with that. We had a lot of success, and the leaders there did a great job. The push was different. I think in high school, it's so important to put yourself out there and make sure they know it's important, and not just the wins and losses, but the child, his or herself and their growth, and wanting to make sure that they know you have their best interests at heart.
Well, Coach Branscom, I thank you for coming on Live from the Pines tonight. We really appreciate it. We hope to have you on before the Lovejoy 2025-2026 season starts. But before we let you go, I want to give a big shout out to our guys at Zilker Belts, Austin Brown and the guys. Thank y'all for everything y'all do for Live from the Pines. Go to zilkerbelts.com. Use discount code PINES936 for all online orders to receive 25% off. Once again, Coach Branscom, thank you.
Thank you so much. This was awesome. Go up, go Lufkin, go East Texas. Love it all.
LP.
Yeah, baby. Racket and Jog in Tyler, Texas, my favorite athletic apparel store. There's a lot.
I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that forever.
Really? It's probably closed down, isn't it?